My name is Elinor Thompson. I'm one of Maryland's commissioners on African American history and culture, appointed by Governor Larry Hogan. This is my second term. Started out in 2017. I'm also a genealogist, historian, author who preserves African American church and cemetery records. So my presentation today is about discovering and preservation of African American cemeteries. It was thought that our African American churches and organizations do not take care of their cemeteries. That's one of my main concerns about people saying things about African Americans do not take care of their cemeteries. That is not true. If we go back to the time of the slave trade and the shipping in the ports of Annapolis, Baltimore, and all around the state of Maryland, St. Mary's County, that was a rough journey for African Americans. Many got sick. They were on crowded boats, vessels. Some had 10 tons, some had 300 tons. And documented those vessels that come into each port. When African Americans came in, the slaves came in, some died on the way to their journey. They were thrown out to sea, sick, came into port, and before they could be sold, they died. So where were they interred? What did they do with the slaves? Did they burn them? Or did they put them in land? Did they bury them somewhere? So it's important for us to document all of our histories, especially the people who came in before us. We want to know their burial spots. Often African Americans would, when they came off of the slave ships and were sold and died, they would sell properties or give properties to African Americans to bury their dead. So often it wouldn't be on such good ground, fertile soil, because they could not benefit financially off a soil that was land that had terrains running through it. You had all kinds of sand and different things like that, making it impossible for anything to grow. So they gave it to the African Americans. However, they buried them there as well. So that's why some of the cemeteries you may see on different documents might document as Potter's Field and things of that nature, because they threw garbage in those pieces of land, but after a certain period of time, they had to bury African Americans there. So that's one plague that the African American cemeteries have. There's some myths and facts about it. Also, they said African Americans do not take care of their burial grounds. Burial records do not exist. Parcels of land were sold again to African Americans because, they couldn't farm off of it. A lot of the cities were farmland at first. So they couldn't make a profit off of it. And in some cases with African American cemeteries, you had grave diggers. They weren't responsible for documenting where the person was interred. They knew where they were interred, but the undertaker would have been responsible for burying the person, and then the organization, if they were incorporated, was responsible for documenting the place where they were interred. So there's another problem where we have plagues. African American cemeteries. You have a lot of African American cemeteries, and I'll talk about this one particular cemetery, Brewer Hill Cemetery in Annapolis, Maryland, where it's one of the oldest African American cemeteries in the capital of our state. They have Civil War heroes and people from all walks of life. They even have white people interred in Brewer Hill Cemetery. It's about 7,000 people who are interred in that cemetery. And there's also a website which I've worked on, and it's History Brewer Hill Cemetery.wixsite.com many years ago. But one in particular person that's interred in that cemetery is Allen Brown Parker Garver, who was born in Philadelphia, Carlsbad, Pennsylvania, went into the Civil War, which a lot of them went into the Civil War after slavery ended. Because if they came out of the war, they were considered as they would be freed. So Allen Brown Parker Garver was a Civil War soldier. He also served as the secretary of Brewer Hill Cemetery in Annapolis. It's historic. It's been there since 1864. And then you had, he was a member of the Masonic Lodge, Universal Lodge 14 in Annapolis on Clay Street, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. Mr. Garver is there with a tombstone, and his whole family is there. And I have his death certificate, of which it says that his father was Jacob Garver, mother was Annie Ellison, and the person signing the death certificate was his wife Hester Garver. The way we get started documenting the cemeteries is to quit talking about it and just start doing it. There's all kinds of resources that we can get from different various organizations, such as the Trader Foundation. The Trader Foundation provides financial assistance for non-capital grants and capital grants. Non-capital means documentation, or maybe brochures, publications, and things like that. And then capital grants means bricks and mortar, so you can reset some of the stones and things like that for the cemetery. There's a website as well, and it's the, I'll get here, there's a website as well for the Trader Foundation, and you can actually go through Maryland Burial Coalition to protect burial sites and find that email information. There's also ways there, if you find a cemetery on a site undiscovered, the first thing you might want to do is call Maryland Office on Cemetery Oversight to see if it's been documented. Also, if you need to document a cemetery as well, on Maryland Historical Trust Inventory List of Properties, it has a form where you can document that cemetery. It has the proper documents and guidelines where you can go through to get it on Maryland Historical Trust List of Historic Properties. And that goes for any type of establishment or land or school or anything else that you think that may have historical value to the to your community or your project. years ago, I worked on a project, and I was so glad to work on this project. It pertained to Sharp Street Church here in Baltimore, Maryland. Our district superintendent sanctioned for me to document and preserve all of these, this cemetery and some records. It took a long time for me to do it, but the records did get preserved, the cemetery records. And it was because of this lady, I'm gonna mention her right here at the Maryland State Archives. I went to the Maryland State Archives and I said, Nancy, I got a project I'm working on. Shh, you can't tell anybody. So anyway, she said, what's this? I said, Sharp Street's burial records. She said, what? So she got everything together, organized the whole thing, and she was able to create a database, have it worked on with volunteers and things, added information about the births and deaths of this historic cemetery that is endangered, but hopefully it'll get fixed up soon, and added all the names to the database, and it's on the Maryland State Archives website, Resurrecting Mount Auburn Cemetery. This is an ongoing project because there's so many burials out there, so many documents, so many deaths that we know about, and a lot we do not know about. But I was honored to be able to be a part of that project because, number one, I have several grandfathers who are interred in the cemetery. This cemetery was organized by Reverend Jenkins, Reverend Joseph Jenkins, and he was an original member of the Old Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church. And it found out in 1872, right, 1872, it was finally organized, but prior to that, we have to think about it.
It's Peck.
James Peck, James W. Peck, I'm sorry, James W. Peck. Prior to that, where were the African Americans being buried? You have to think about it. All over. So one of my grandfathers, Benjamin Brown, who was the original signer of the Old Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church, was the secretary. He's interred in that cemetery. I haven't found him yet, but I know he's dead. You know, so Sharp Street existed in the late 1700s, latter part of the 1700s. Where was the African Americans being interred? Were they being burned up? They were being buried at Sharp Street in Baltimore and at various other places. I have another grandfather whose name is Father Noah Gaines of Ebenezer AME Church. For many years I looked for his gravesite, unknowing that he was buried at Laurel Defunct Cemetery. That's no longer here. They're making preservation efforts. I think the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture, I do know, awarded them a grant for documentation. I think they're working on a book that's for funding to help preserve some of the memorials or preserve the history of Laurel Defunct Cemetery. There's other cemeteries located in Anne Arundel County. We have someone here from Moses Cemetery, which is a historically black-known cemetery. They get organized around 1872, 74, something like that. But prior to that, there was other cemeteries in the area. I worked with Maryland Historical Trust Cemetery Working Group, and we formed a group through the commission to find out the needs of African American cemeteries. What do we need to do in order to preserve a lot of these African American cemeteries? Do we need to get organized and become a 501c3 tax exempt organization? But most cemeteries that or continue to bury people are organized as a 501c3 13. Anybody can file for a grant. Grants are not always guaranteed, but these are some of the grants that you can get from the James R. Trader Foundation. $2,000. Their grants start in January and July. Preservation Maryland also has workshops. I did receive a grant one time for a workshop, Asbury Broad Neck, documenting how to document your cemeteries, and did a cemetery preservation workshop. I had a lot of documents that pertain to preservation of the workshops, of the cemetery. It's important just to know who is in the cemetery. Again, there's all kinds of programs. I'm looking at one cemetery in particular working on is a cemetery down in Deal Beach. It was endangered. It has a relative, actually, in-law actually, who served in the war of 1812 to 1814. He was a black drummer in the skirmish down in Deal. Those are the important factors that we have. Those people who paved the way just for you and I, they're buried in the cemetery, so we need to take care and preserve our history for all of our future generations. I don't know whether anybody heard of Western Star Cemetery here in Baltimore County. Mount Zion Cemetery in Baltimore and Lansdowne. That was really, really endangered as well. It's a need. We have a really, really strong need to preserve and document all of that history. And I'll tell you what happened yesterday. Yesterday I got the official go-ahead to preserve the records of Western Star Cemetery and Mount Zion Cemetery. The church didn't want the history, didn't want the records. We have actually some prisoners that were hired to do the job, to cut the grass and keep the maintenance up in the cemetery. The church didn't want it. Didn't want the records. The records has been housed in the house for about 20 years. Received a phone call a few days ago. When I say a few days ago, it was like Monday. The house that the records were housed in is being sold Friday. We called and tried to get those records back to the church. They didn't want them for some reason. So they say, who can I find? Elinor Thompson. Now I'm getting ready for this PowerPoint presentation and everything else. And we know Murphy's Law, some things happen. I'm not going to tell you everything that happened. I was able to preserve and save those records and send them to a warehouse where they will be secured, preserved, and it will be available later on for public record and public use. It's a lot of history in cemeteries. The lynching, I work with the lynching commission as well. There's a lot of lynchings that went on prior to 1851. And I bought this book today because it documents the history, and I'm teasing Nancy and everybody else, of Western Star Cemetery and Mount Zion Cemetery. It only goes back to 1930, but it describes and it's document. We need to become a corporation. We need to, for the cemetery incorporation, it talks about the cemetery. I just briefly went through it, and it talks about that it had 2 buildings on the cemetery. Well, Western Star, I think Western Star or Mount Zion, either one. I'm getting kind of mixed up. Western Star goes back to 1851. I can believe it. It's listed on Maryland Historical Trust list of historic properties, And it goes to say by 1930, the building that they were housed, of 2 buildings that they had on the property, was in need of repair. So that goes to tell me that there was a meeting house, an old meeting house there. So more than likely, that church was organized, I'm going to say, between 1839 and 1851. Again, where were they burying the people? Where were they burying the slaves? That cemetery is in urgent need of people who can help take care of that cemetery. But thank the Lord that I was able to save 103 boxes of records so I can make it available for the public and the people who have ancestors interred in the cemetery. It makes a big difference, because if we don't do this now, preserve a lot of this history, you can get state of Maryland markers in some cases to recognize some of these cemeteries. They're free through the state of Maryland. It can exhibit the history of the cemetery. It also shows that the African American community was here prior to what many others think that we weren't here. We didn't we weren't recognized. But now you're coming up with urban renewal. I walked in on another case and down in Deal Beach where they were gonna bulldoze over the cemetery. Its entirety. I have pictures of it. I'm out there arguing with the person on the machine, and it was a man. No, you can't do this. You can't build 3 houses on here. You're disturbing the graves. Put a stop work order on it for over a year. They're starting now. They started again, and then they stopped because you know why? They struck a grave. No one was really going out and caring for the cemetery. But when I make myself visible and other people are visible, it makes a difference. It stopped again. They know they struck a grave. But if we don't get out there and clean up the cemeteries when we can, get the youth, get organized, and help get anybody to help. We have prisoners that's willing to help, but we also have people that do not want the prisoners on their site to help clean up the lots. Now, some of these prisoners, and I work with a group of people, they're in trouble, have been in trouble because they broke the law, but small infractions of the law. But they still need to be able to get out there and make a way for themselves so they don't get back in trouble again. The people from this particular cemetery that I was talking about stopped that work. Wouldn't let anybody do it. The prior owner died. So preserving a lot of this history in different ways, it allows the next generation to know who we are and what we stood for and what we fought for, because it's just like when an elder closes his eyes. If you don't collect this oral history for the cemeteries, that's pertaining to the communities, and the churches were the core of all of our communities. We couldn't have funerals were held on Sundays in many cases. Slaves couldn't meet, African Americans couldn't meet before slavery and congregate together. Before 1864. That was a no-no. So now we can do all these things. We can meet, we can digitize, scan, and copy, do ground penetration radar screening that will help with preservation efforts with the cemetery, build websites. Brewer Hill has a website that I built. Mount Auburn from the Maryland State Archives, Bethel Burial Project. A lot of people who were released from slavery here in this area and all over moved and went to Philadelphia. They have a great website, but we need to do surveys. If you need funding, you can put together memorial pages and things like that. If you know people in the neighborhood who have family members, they'll be sure they want their grandmother to see their grandmother in a book. I'm going to give you a little hint. You can say, okay, this is a full page, it's $100. That would benefit and offset the cost of some of these cemeteries who have little to no people who are attended to them. Because I'm getting older. We're all getting older. You know, so we need to bring in funding, and a way to bring the younger generation in to help preserve some of this history is to put together memorial books. And you can just rest assured people will buy them. I'm going to open it up for some conversation because of the internet, and you can just ask me any questions that you think you may.
Can you talk about this?
Yeah, sure. So on the death certificates, I printed this out because, I worked with the Lynching Memorial Project, and I worked with, a gentleman, Wright Smith, okay, who was lynched in Annapolis, Maryland. The cause of death was gunshot to the back of the head. Bunch of lies on his death certificate. The whole, it breaks me up, but the whole thing was horrendous. He's yelling and screaming, "Help, murder!" Downtown Annapolis, 2 o'clock at nighttime. Why? In 1898. So you didn't have the hustle and bustle of cars and trains and things like we have today. You didn't even have the lights. So anyway, he's yelling, "Help, murder, everybody." So on his death certificate, it shows that it says B, the number 2, and a B. Well, it's all kinds of lies in the paper. They shot him. They said that he was shot in the body, shot in the leg, this, that, and another. Lied on Dr. William Bishop, the first African American to serve at Anne Arundel Medical Center or Emergency Center. The older death certificates have numbers on there. So when you go back and you're researching your death certificates and things, you'll see the cause of death. This is a revision from 1909, but there was a 1908 revision. It tells, when researching a lot of your death certificates, what the people died from. You'll see tuberculosis, you'll see smallpox, you'll see a lot of different information, but this is the cause of death. It'll have 8 on there. Whooping cough. Relapsing fever. What is that?
No COVID.
No COVID. No. What's that? Burgy. So in documenting the death certificates, I always like to use this information to kind of come up to date, figure out what was going on, and while I'm doing the research. What is that? Gonococcus infection. So they were just making up. I'm not making up things, but it's ironic how the death certificates, what it shows, what it reveals, while documenting a death that took place at a cemetery. There was a lot of morticians who were territorial. You have here in Baltimore, Maryland, Samuel Chase, which is connected on my mother's side of the family. My mother's father's side here in Baltimore, Samuel Chase. He was also a Masonic Lodge member. I have a photograph of him too as well. He was near Sharp Street. His established was near Sharp Street. And like I say, he was a Masonic Lodge member as well. Those are some of the historical highlights we fail to look at when the people are interred in the cemeteries as well. Writing grants and things like that, we want to see the historical significance of the African American cemeteries. Document the cemeteries. And again, you can always call the Office of Oversight here in Baltimore, Maryland, and say, I found a cemetery where I think somebody's going to dig it up. Or file a complaint. It's right there online. Free searches for death certificates are on the Maryland State Archives website. So you don't have to always go there. You can go to SE 42 and 43 online and look up some of the earlier death certificates. But preserve the history because it's really, really rich. African Americans, they built America. So not just African Americans, other ethnic backgrounds. So we want to preserve all the cemetery history that we can preserve and make sure that these cemeteries don't get torn up and built upon, by urban renewal. It's a lot of people that we might be sitting on top of some people here in Morgan State. There was there's a biblical institute that was established by the clergy of the Old Washington Conference of the United Methodist Church. Again, one of my grandfathers was the secretary. I preserved those records. So I found some information, but I can't find it now, I do think. Until I pull it back up, there was a couple people buried near that biblical institute. And again, one of the professors here, JohnBaptiste Snowden, who was a professor right here at Morgan, his great-grandmother was an African princess, stolen from her land, bought here in Dorsey, Maryland. And his father, JohnBaptiste Snowden, was also a minister. So this is some of the history that you'll find with the people who are interred beneath the graves of African American cemeteries. Princesses, you came from prince and princess, you came from royalty. So after saying that, I'll open up to any questions that you may have, you may not have. You have my email address. I'll write down my email address for you because of the problem that we have with the internet. And you can ask any questions and I can send you this PowerPoint. I will send you that PowerPoint so you can read and go over it yourself, and any questions that you may have, you can ask me. But just say cemetery preservation because people are hacking and things of that nature. So just send me that information. Is there any other questions? Everybody have a 501c3 tax exempt organization for your cemetery? You have to be in good standards with the state of Maryland. 501c3 tax exempt or FO1c3 tax exempt. We have grants with the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture. There's websites. We have workshops. I think Director Johnson Chanel Johnson has a workshop later on today to explain about the procedures with filing for grants and things like that. It's very informational. You can also go on our website or Maryland Historical Trust website. Pull that video up, watch it. It tells all about our grants. Last year we had $1 million, and we distributed to different organizations, African cemeteries and other projects, $1 million. And this year, coming up in 2024, we've increased that project, the budget, to $5 million. So the more we support our African American commission and do work and advocate for us, we have delegates that's advocating for additional money for our projects. The more we get out here and preserve history such as this, the more money we get. Time is 11:30. Is there any questions?
Yeah, hi, my name is Marcia Coleman Adebayo, and I'm with the Bethesda African African Cemetery Coalition, and we're fighting to stop the ongoing desecration of one of the oldest, I think, most significant African burial grounds in the country. It was a mass grave of Africans who were brought over from the kingdoms of Ghana and Songhai and Khartoum, Bornu, and brought to the River Road, Bethesda area to plant tobacco. And one of the problems that we've had with funding is that our land was stolen. And for example, Amazon owns a portion of our land. We have a portion of our land that was owned by multinational corporations, by Montgomery County itself. And so when we apply for grants, one of the major responses we get is, do you own the land? Well, no, our land was stolen, so we don't own the land, and therefore we're disqualified from a lot of the grants, from applying for a lot of the grants. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about how communities can go forward when their land has been stolen, and a lot of the corporations make owning the land a criteria for applying for the grants.
I have a remedy for that, and I was with them a few weeks ago in Annapolis, and it's a crying shame. But are you a tax exempt organization?
Yes.
Okay, this is one thing you can do in order to move forward, because you do need funding. I mean, document your cemetery. Document the people who's interred in the cemetery. You want to become a tax exempt organization, like you said, tax exempt organization, document it, put it in a publication, a book, sell it. That's going to bring you some revenue and to preserving some of the history of your family, of your ancestors and the people who were there prior, and fight that way. They are a fighting group, fighting for land again that was stolen, that the ancestors were interred on. And it was on Channel 11, was it Channel? So it's been everywhere, so they've been fighting for that. So that's what you have to do. Start researching the death certificates at the Maryland State Archives. And I know it's families, generations of families there. So start researching at the Maryland State Archives. You can go online, go to SE 42 and 43, and we start researching the names. Put it into a publication.
But that's going to depend on the time period. What time period are you talking about?
We have a South-South cemetery, which means that we have the original inhabitants from Africa buried in the cemetery. And so we're using slave schedules for those.
Okay.
And of course, the terrorists, that we call them, didn't use names of Africans.
Right.
They just said black male 14,
Right.
black female 2. So we don't have names. Then after emancipation, when the African community bought the land, then we're now at that period of history. were able to use the Maryland system, because now we actually have names.
Right.
From 1898.
Yeah.
But it was
1898.
not required until law, just to tell you by law by the state of Maryland, that to document all births and deaths. I think Baltimore City started
1875.
72, something like that, 75, to document. So you can go online again and review some of the death certificates, especially if you know your family surname. So you can sit home. I think the main problem we have today is, again, they said there were no burial records. People kept records. They just didn't tell you everything. The grave diggers knew exactly where this one was buried at, that one was buried at. Sometimes you look on the census records, you'll see that it says they couldn't read or write. I have a couple maps where they said this grave digger couldn't read or write, but he sure enough did draw a map that I had. Found it in the old book and found exactly who it was. They could read and write, but for fear of retaliation, during the days prior, before, and after, before, segregation, they feared a lot of things, so they would just say they couldn't read and write. But you find scripts and bits of paper.
What was the name of the equipment that you talked about when you used to locate graves?
Ground penetration radar screening.
Is there a cost associated with that?
Yeah, it's about, it depends on what size the cemetery is.
The reason why I said that is because if they're saying that the land was taken from them, is it possible that you could get a court order to have that done so they can go, that will give you permission to go on the land? Have you tried that?
Yeah, we've tried that, because it's private property.
It's private
Well,
property.
that's what the court order was for, though.
I know, but the court has not been prepared to overturn the rights of a private owner
Yep.
to protect his land. The owners would not even allow us to bring cadaver dogs.
Yeah,
Well, they're not
that's
gonna do
another
that,
thing.
right?
I'm sorry?
So I know they're not gonna do that.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why a judge wouldn't, if you came with the records and you presented it in court to a judge that we have proof or reason to believe that these bodies are located,
Right.
why would a judge deny you access
No,
to be able to follow through? That doesn't make sense.
It's because
Because they're in Montgomery County.
It's Montgomery County. We have a ruling in our favor from a judge.
Yeah.
Okay.
And now we're in appeals court.
Yeah,
which is-
that's
Okay.
where I was at with them.
Oh,
The
okay,
owners are
good,
still
good.
fighting us.
That's
Oh,
all.
of course, that.
We
That's-
don't have, in fact, they have guards outside the gate, so we have to
Yeah.
fight the guards every time we go there. They call the police on us,
Mhm.
and the last time we heard gunshots, when we went to the cemetery to pour libation in the St.
Yep.
Francis. So in our situation, we're in a combat situation. This is not
Yeah.
a situation that's very pleasant.
How was the land stolen? I mean, how did you lose ownership of?
My understanding is there was a very active KKK in Bethesda. It started around 1924. And so the county government, in collusion with the KKK,
Mhm.
basically wiped out the entire black community. Not one black member, not one family survived
Oh, wow.
what we considered a genocide.
Right.
And when they were excavating the area, and a lot of the wood was coming up through excavation, there was a lot of burn marks on the wood.
Okay.
So we think a lot of the families were burned out of their
Burned out.
homes that they didn't voluntarily leave.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's almost like Greenwood.
Right.
Yes.
And you mentioned the cadaver dogs also. Anne Arundel County, I have a contact that will bring cadaver dogs out to site, so the cadaver dogs can go around and do a lot of different things, but go around the outer bounds of the cemetery, and they will detect human remains.
Yep.
Human remains as well. And that's free. That's free. Did you hear me? Free. So that's the way, you know, it's gonna take a lot of money to do what you need to do, and I commend you for doing it. I mean, they've been fighting really, really hard to, get this turned around, and it's sad. And stolen land, people have always stolen African Americans' land.
Yes.
Take a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and I know of people that, I know one cemetery in particular that when the person moved in, they knew it, but it was tombstones right out there. And they knocked them down and built a house right over top of them. And I know this for a fact. And this happens more frequently than you think. It does. On a daily basis, somebody will call me, found this cemetery, or that cemetery, or that cemetery. Or I have some records, and I'll go from here to Sykesville, Maryland, and pick up 103 boxes so I can get them preserved. I can't take on projects, but I will get somebody from this lovely group to help me. I have somebody in mind. She's retired. She's retired as well.
I was going to say, if I raise my hand, I'm not volunteering. How are you? Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody else? Go ahead.
Does it have to be a cemetery that is still being used, or it could not used, I should say?
A cemetery is a cemetery.
And still being used?
It's a burial spot. What, talking about being a tax exempt?
Preservation.
To document it, it depends. Is it on your property? If it's on private property, it's a different story.
Church property.
Is it on church property and it hasn't been inventoried through Maryland Historical Trust or documented through the Maryland Office of Cemetery Oversight?
Oh, I don't know, I'm just asking a question. A general question.
We just want to preserve all African American cemeteries. We want to know where they are located for future use, which would be building, and just to know that who's in territory, respect that person who has been, you know, who's going on. We want to acknowledge them.
But the Office of Cemetery Oversight, I thought, they don't have jurisdiction over church cemeteries.
No, they don't. No, they do not have jurisdiction over church cemeteries, but just document, letting people know that.
But they were
there's a
maintaining an
cemetery.
inventory
Yeah,
of all
they're doing an
cemeteries.
inventory of all cemeteries across the state.
Is this being advertised to the general community?
What?
About the listing, the cemetery?
Yeah, it is. In Anne Arundel County, they're working on that. I'm from Anne Arundel County. The Office of Cemetery Oversight is also working on to update their database system too. It's my understanding they are trying to update the system as well. Again, I work with Maryland Historical Trust and my commission with the cemetery working group. And there's a draft there, and you can also go online, pull that draft off a line, and it'll tell exactly what we talked about, some of the things that I'm talking about now, how to become a tax exempt organization, how to document what's the needs of African American cemeteries, endangered. You know, we did a survey, we sent that out, and it went well. We were asking for additional funding for preserving African American cemeteries. It does not, just not African American cemeteries. Again, you'll find in some cemeteries, again, African Americans are interred in predominantly white cemeteries too. Some Catholic churches.
St. Vincent's.
Yeah. You know, so, you know, as you research the database on the Maryland State Archives, it lists every county in the state of Maryland. Look up the surnames. But it only goes up to 1922. So I think it's 1845 at the Maryland State Archives. You can look at some death certificates. All of them aren't on there. You won't find everybody's names on there. You can try to find a mortality list, and it lists people in each county that may have passed away, but all may have not been documented because people lived in, you know, way back on farms and things like that. So that's why they're buried on farms and things like that. They didn't get to town to document the deaths or births in many cases.
Didn't want to document it.
Didn't want to, or didn't, yeah. So they lived way back on the farm. That's why if you ever drive down the highway and you'll see a tree in the middle of the field, like heading to the eastern shore, you can just rest assured that there's a cemetery right there. 99.9% of the time, that's a resting spot. It's one on the eastern shore. I really wanted to go out there. The tree is beautiful. I say it's a burial spot, but I looked and it was like 5 miles away almost. It was a great big tree. I mean, it was big enough for me to see. I might be getting exaggerated.
No, you're not exaggerating for one of those areas you're talking about.
You probably know where I'm talking about. In between Centerville and Hampton, Delaware, on the right-hand side going down, it's a great big tree in the middle there. It's a burial spot there. Any other questions?
I did. The reason I said they didn't want to be documented, my grandmother married at the age of 18. My father never had a birth certificate.
Yeah.
2 years later, she married somebody else. So that's how I became a Bennett. But I finally found the marriage certificate when she was 18, and months before he was born. So I put 2 and 2 together. She didn't want that marriage. Basically, she wanted to annul that marriage and moved on. So that was that. But my other question was, what are you going to do about the cemetery construction that you said you halted? What can the state, and you tell me what you're going to do, but shouldn't the state be able to stop that construction?
Do I really want to answer that?
Yes.
Well, say in a
They
case.
should be, if they had knowledge of it, what was going on. But however, if we don't get involved and open our mouths, what happened with that particular cemetery, it was endangered. Grass was this high. Sunken graves was, it's been like that since 1965. The cemetery has been there since 1842. If we don't get involved, you think the developers are going to care? If the cemeteries of grass is standing this high, caskets are broken, you have low tables of water close to the wetlands where the slaves came in anyway, because there was an old meeting house there, so they snuck in to the meeting house. Some of them may have died and stuff, but if we don't get involved and step up and let the state know, or even take care, there's one endangered cemetery that it wasn't being taken care of. What the developers here? When I went there that day, the excavator was running. It was running. I'm saying, stop. Oh, no, you can't do this. You can't do that. So I called Anne Arundel County. Called them. And let them know, and made my phone call to certain people. And it stopped. They started back up again. And I stopped again because I'm coming around that cemetery. I'm coming. I have a lot of machetes in that cemetery. Yeah. We have to get involved. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to respond in terms of his question is that everybody here should know the name of Elizabeth Hughes.
Oh, yeah.
She's the Maryland State Preservation Historian. And so we've had to deal with her as well. Because she oftentimes will decide a case, whether or not the project can move forward or whether or not the project cannot move forward. And if you look at her record, she decides fairly closely with developers. And so we've also had to take her on as well.
What's her name?
Elizabeth Hughes.
Well, I worked with Elizabeth Hughes
Okay.
on the cemetery working group. Also worked on the Maryland Heritage Area Authorities grant review panel as well. And that's why through the commission, I was placed on that working group with the grant review panels as well to bring some equity, diversity, and inclusion, to look at the grants, how they're being distributed through, different various ethnic backgrounds. And if you look at the last past grants that have been awarded, it's even itself out. Through Maryland Heritage Area Authorities. It's evened itself out now because we're making ourselves present.
What is it called again?
Maryland Heritage Area Authorities. That's with Maryland Heritage Historical Trust too. Kind of all work together. But you just have to show up. That's it. She sees a lot of things. Elizabeth Hughes is great. She's great. And most of the people that's on the Maryland Historical Trust and the different review boards, they're very professional. They'll help, but we just have to apply for it. We have to apply for the grants. If you don't apply for it, you can't get it. Ask not, you get not. If you don't ask, you don't get anything. But you have to show up and support them too as well and bring these things to their attention. There's surveys all the time. They'll send feedback. How do you think this workshop went, or the grants, and can we do to make it better? And that's why I'm there as part of this commission as well, to help see what's going on. Apply for the grants. Even documentation, even to tell your story, non-capital grants, Maryland Heritage Area has. Write your story about your cemetery and your situation, and put it out in publication. Ask Preservation Maryland for money. Ask Maryland Humanities Council for money. I'm throwing some things out here where you have grants and things like that, but can get grants for your project, even for cemeteries. Preservation Maryland, 6 to Fix. They fixed up several cemeteries. I'm working on a cemetery down in Charles County who has the descendants of Matthew Henson interred in that cemetery. Working on that project. So it's lots that we can, a lot of things we can benefit to recognize the people who have gone on with signs and different things like that. But we have to preserve this history. We have to get it out here and do it. But most importantly, we have to get the youth involved. Tomorrow's not promised to you and I, so put that stuff in publication and put grandma in a book.
Thank you.
Continue on.